Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Official Visit podcast. I am Tyson Alger of the Oregonian, and I am joined here by Andrew Greif, my co-beat partner on the Oregon Ducks beat. Andrew is currently in North Bend, getting ready to head out to Eugene for the track this weekend. Andrew, how are you doing? I think you're doing a little busy work before heading out, huh?
I am, yep. Taking care of some stuff in my hometown. I escaped the heat of the Willamette Valley for a couple days. My AC-less apartment was not really comfortable anymore, Tyson. Imagine that. When it's 90 degrees inside of a living room. So, yeah, escaped to my hometown where it is 63, which is very nice.
You know what? I don't feel all that terrible because your apartment has so many cool aspects to it anyways with that view that, if you have to deal with a little heat, so be it.
Yeah, no, I'm not expecting much sympathy. We have a pretty cool view, but I just couldn't. There's like a 15-degree difference, I swear, between living room and deck, and that wasn't really bearable anymore.
Okay, so this is I think we're on a pretty good stretch of about 3 weeks in a row of podcasting, which means we've hit the summer doldrums pretty much at this point already. What do you want to talk about this week?
I think that we should talk about some recruiting. Oregon has made a little bit of hay recently in recruiting, picking up a commitment. We're taping this on a Wednesday, and they picked up a recruitment last night from a JC offensive lineman. But I think just also talking about his commitment in the scope of larger recruiting topics. We'd love to have talked to Andrew Nemec, our recruiting expert from the Oregonian, but he's not available, so we're just going to kind of talk amongst ourselves about kind of our just real thoughts on where Oregon's at in the 2017 class. Maybe a little track and Devon Allen talk. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's topical this week. And then maybe a little quarterback talk, too.
Yeah, that could be fun. I do think, because we did solicit a couple questions on Twitter, I do think we should most importantly start out with this one from Matt Preem from 24/7. He asks, do we prefer Scotch, duct, or Gorilla, or masking tape?
Depends on the job, right?
I think you just go duct tape for everything.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Fun fact, in Wasilla, Alaska, where I grew up, the Walmart there sells more duct tape than any other Walmart in the world.
Why is that?
Because it's Wasilla, Alaska. All right. On to some serious topics here. We did have one question from Michael Everson who asks, should we get excited when a recruit says Alabama along with Oregon is among their favorites? That's a pretty general question, but it kind of harkens back into the Oregon kind of emerging as one of those schools that's kind of routinely mentioned in with like the Alabamas and the other big powers. What do you kind of think about this question?
Tyson, I'm a couple years older than you, so I remember the days when Oregon being mentioned in the alongside the likes of like Ohio State for Terrell Pryor was a huge deal. It was like, oh my gosh, Oregon's made it. But I think since Oregon's turned the corner, that kind of grouping has really changed, and fans are a lot more realistic and almost a little more upset when that happens, because I think that what it used to be when Oregon was on the come up was that, this is what Oregon could be. And that was really exciting, obviously, to be lumped in with Ohio States, Penn States, whatever, what have you, Texases of the world for some quarterbacks. But now I think that Oregon's been to the title game twice and lost, had a setback this year, losing the Alamo Bowl. I think that in some ways when Oregon doesn't get picked anymore and still is included, among the top programs in the country, I think fans take it as almost like a shot of not this is who we could be, but this is who we are not.
Correct.
And so I think that is a distinction that's come with Oregon's rise. And so they're not really, when they're not landing like that JC offensive lineman who chose Alabama this week, I think it's kind of a shot like, it's not good enough to be flattered. Right. It's that, we're falling short.
Right.
I think there are way more reasons for that. Geography is obviously a huge one, just like practical reasons. But I do think that from a fan's perspective, they're getting really tired of being that quote unquote bridesmaid and not the bride.
Right, because just kind of piggybacking off of what you said, Oregon's at the point now where they're just not necessarily happy to be an also ran in that. They want to be competing for national titles and all those things. They want to. Ideally, they would like Alabama to be flattered that they're in a discussion with Oregon. Now, that's a very big stretch, but it's just one of those things where if you're always the also ran, you're not going to be able to compete on that grounding. But one of the other things I was going to say though too is I saw some kid, and I believe this was a tweet Nemec had put out. Some kid had narrowed down his list to like his top 15 schools, like. I think and granted I wasn't an athlete, I was just looking at it from the academic sides, but I think I looked at like 2 schools, and I get that this is kind of part of the recruiting game and stuff, but like, if you're picking 15 schools, Oregon is, routinely one of the top 15 schools in the country, so like it's not all that shocking to see Oregon's name come up in those situations. It's just the locking down of them that's a different aspect.
Right. No, I think that where Oregon is at now is that they're in a really good position still. They're always going to be relevant for one reason or another. But the fans, they want them to close. And so that's the big deal is can you get those guys who maybe you shouldn't get, who regularly, sometimes they steal a big guy away, like an Armstead. Or D'Anthony Thomas, those were kind of the heydays of Oregon's recruiting. But now people want Helfrich to do the same thing on a regular basis. And, you're always going to get comment sections should never be taken as a true representation of what a fan base thinks, but, or even message boards for that matter. But I think that there is a lot of frustration with Oregon staff, not finishing, quote unquote, strong the 2016 class. And then now they have 3 commitments in the 2017 class. There's a belief that they're starting slow, although I would argue Oregon pretty much always starts slow because they were very selective. So this isn't too off the radar, but I just think that people want Helfrich to close on more kind of big name targets and not just be the kind of flattering pick where it's like, oh, well, I'd love to come visit you because of your facilities, but I'd actually like to go somewhere else because of their tradition or their chance of winning a title.
With kind of the attention on, people wanting Oregon to close and all those sort of things, do you think some of that just also has to do with the fact that there's just so much interest in recruiting in general right now? I mean, if you go on our website, all of our recruiting stuff is routinely some of the top read stuff. Like it's almost like a second season for people. So, when Oregon was on the come up, if they had slow years, do you think there was as much criticism back then just because there might not have been as much just intensely scrutinized interest on recruiting, or am I looking too much into that?
No, I think this is you're right. This is the second season, and maybe in some regions of the country it was always this way, but at Oregon, because of their recent success, huge success, it's become much more of a scrutinized thing. So I think you're absolutely right, and coaches feel it. They always feel, you talk to them, that this is a really hard part of the job because it is like a second season, and people do keep a scoreboard of stars and average star rating of a recruit, etc. And yet it's harder to kind of gauge, I think, from kind of gauge how they're doing to get true representation, because it's not like a game where everyone can watch everything happening. It has to be because the NCAA rules, shrouded a little bit, and so you don't really know whether Oregon was truly pursuing a guy to the very end, or if they maybe get cooled off, or you never know quite how a thing happens, and so it's always, I think there's some frustration there. And if I could add one thing, I don't know that Oregon coaches necessarily feel the kind of angst about being included among the top schools, but then being left out. That's a big generalization, but I just remember talking to Don Pelham last year before the USC football game. And because that week, Sua Cravens, the star safety linebacker, had said that out of high school, he was really upset that Oregon didn't recruit him at all. So that would have been, I think, 2011 or 2012. And I said, is it good? In some ways, is it good to hear that he's a little pissed off, because it means that you as a program have kind of arrived at a total Southern California kid wanted to hear from you at Oregon. That would have been unthinkable a few years ago, let alone decades. And Pelham was like, I don't even care about that. Like, I wish he wasn't upset with us, but like, we checked him out and it just wasn't to be. Like, he didn't really seem like, oh yeah, it's a great moral victory that we're getting included. I think that they don't really take in other schools' evaluations into consideration.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. I will say though, like it wouldn't be like Don Pelham to go like to give you some like big grand story about that though. you know.
This is true. Yeah. Yes.
The only other thing I was going to add to that though too is just 5 years ago, fans, it wasn't so in your face that you were the bridesmaid because there weren't kids tweeting out their top fives or just saying it's between Oregon and Alabama and then Alabama wins or something like that. Right. It just wasn't as visual or accessible as it is now.
Yeah, it might be one or two stars who did that, but it wasn't like that wasn't the accepted general practice, I don't think. For like a 3-star guy, like for example, David Morris of Sherwood, who he committed to Oregon State last week, and now Oregon extended him offer after seeing him at a camp at Madison High School in Portland this week, and he was kind of saying that, yeah, I don't want to necessarily rule out Oregon yet. It sounded like he's definitely really flattered by Oregon's offer, and he's rated a 3-star athlete. I don't think he would have had that much attention on. I'm sure this isn't to put him down, but I don't think a 3-star athlete would have garnered nearly this much attention 5 years ago. But now, because it is, fans really, I think, feel like they're feeling the punches whenever a guy turns them down, because it's like, it's not just Terrell Pryor, it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 guys in a week. And that leads to a lot of, I think, this feeling that Oregon's getting left behind, whether or not that's true. I mean, there are still, 8 months left before signing day?
Yeah, we got a long haul until that day.
And just to update folks, last night, Oregon did pick up its 3rd commit of the 2017 class. John Vaca, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Diablo Valley College, same place that produced Tuli Talia, 6'5", 285-pound offensive lineman. And he looks like, according to Andrew Nemec's story this morning, he chose him over Arizona, BYU, Cal, Cincinnati, Colorado State, Washington State, that type of caliber of program. So that makes, along with running back C.J. Verdell, 4-star D lineman Langi Tuifua, he's the 3rd. Baker, the JUCO #1 tackle, but I guess they get another JUCO lineman in his stead.
Cool. Well, let's change gears here a little bit. Something I know that you kind of wanted to at least mention a little bit. One of the things that people always like to talk about is quarterbacks, and Travis Jonsen, who seems like he will find himself in a quarterback battle this fall, was recently a participant at a private quarterback camp. Andrew, what do you think about that?
Well, in some ways it wasn't too surprising, because the quarterback camp was run by Steve Clarkson, who has mentored Travis Jonsen since he was, I think, a freshman in high school down in Anaheim. So he and Clarkson go way back. He's really responsible for getting Jonsen to the Elite 11 camp in high school, and then becoming this really top prospect. So you kind of figure that he and Clarkson might work out again in their off time. But what was notable was that Jonsen was practicing at this camp. He was a counselor, technically, but they had counselor workouts, and he was there alongside Deshaun Watson of Clemson, who is the odds-on favorite, literally, in Vegas to win the Heisman Trophy. Josh Rosen of UCLA, the wonderkind who was terrific last year in most stretches. Brady White, Arizona State. He's probably going to be the quarterback in Tempe this year. A lot of really good players. Shea Patterson of Ole Miss, Brad Kaya, Miami, Max Brown, USC, Trevor Knight, A&M, who Oregon took a look at in the grad transfer sweepstakes. So I just think it's notable that he's getting some time to be alongside those guys. Maybe not that he's working out the private quarterbacks coach. Even Dakota Prukop does that with George Whitfield, who's kind of, Clarkson and Whitfield are two of the most notable private QB tutors. But it's pretty. I don't know how he necessarily held his ground. Jonsen did there, but I think it's really interesting that he's getting that kind of experience alongside those guys, and that must make you feel like you belong if you're a quarterback like that.
Yeah, that was kind of my first impression from that too. Is you kind of talk about the battle that Prukop and Jonsen are in, and whether or not what we've heard about Jonsen is legitimate or not, because we haven't really been able to see him other than the spring game. But like, it just kind of gives it has to give you like a little bit of a sense that like, okay, like maybe he's at least decent, because how many backup quarterbacks are getting invited to events like that if they just absolutely can't play,
Yeah.
And just to be able to pick up experience from other quarterbacks who have been there and done that and that sort of thing. I don't know if this is going to be something that all of a sudden turns Jonsen into a star, but it's definitely valuable experience that he can kind of take back in pocket and bring that into fall camp with.
Yeah, there was a story I never wrote, but I did some reporting on during the Alamo Bowl week, which was where I talked to Nate Costa about, who was then an Oregon grad assistant, about the kind of rise of quarterback tutors like Whitfield and Clarkson, and how like a quarterback's coach views them. And he said at Oregon that they didn't really mind. They didn't really think that quarterbacks coaches were the scum of the earth who were going to screw up everyone's mechanics or anything like that. But that it is an interesting kind of balance you have to walk, because some of these guys got to this point because of these quarterback tutors, and there are bound to be subtle differences between what a college coach wants technique wise and what the private guy said. And so I think there is sometimes a little bit of push and pull, a little tug of war between the staff and the quarterback guru. They probably don't see always eye to eye on how to exactly to hit your 5-step drop, etc. But it sounds like in Jonsen's case with Clarkson and with Whitfield, the Oregon staff has a pretty good relationship there, and that they aren't too worried that a weekend or a week of work with those guys now, not that they're in college, will necessarily screw up or alter kind of the technique, the fundamentals, all that stuff.
Well, especially when you do have a new quarterbacks coach at Oregon and David Yost coming off of he had been working with Scott Frost previously, and then these private coaches it would definitely be beneficial to the Oregon staff if at least it's like somewhat on the same page, so it's not basically three voices in one kid's ear within the first 2 years he's at school there.
Right, and and on a practical level too, I don't think that if you're a staff, you really want to be too hard on a private quarterbacks coach in some ways, because those guys often tutor some of the best in the country. I think you want to have a good relationship with them, so it makes sense that a staff wouldn't burn a bridge by saying what that guy's doing is all wrong by any means, and that's not what Oregon's doing. But I really truly don't think that Oregon views the work that these guys get in as being anything but a plus. Like if they're going down to Southern California and working out for a week, that's better than the alternative going to somewhere else and partying for a week. So I think that they look at it almost as like, okay, you're still getting work in, it's gravy, good for you.
Exactly. All right, so let's transition from that into a little bit of track and field. Primarily, what's the outlook for Devon Allen going into this week?
I believe he's going to be running, obviously, the high hurdles, 110-meter hurdles, reigning indoor champion at 60 meters in the high hurdles, 2014 national champion in the outdoor U.S. and NCAA. So I think he is, I haven't looked up times, I should have, but I think he is absolutely a guy, almost like the guy to beat. It's his home track. He's looking really good. But he's also entered in the 200 from what I've seen. And so I'm really interested to see how he does there. If he ends up running, I feel like I should have checked this in doubt. Sorry, it's been a hectic couple of days. I'm sorry, listeners, but I believe he's running the 200, and I'm just curious if he does it to see his flat out speed. I don't think we have a great sense for just like just how fast he can really go, because he's either in pads, which isn't like a great measure of it, or he's got hurdles in front of him. So I'd love to see him coming off the turn and 200 and really see what he has over that final 90, 100 meters to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's the thing with him is, you've seen a couple of those bursts on the football field. I'm thinking like that Michigan State game where he caught that ball up the middle and then kind of pulled away for the touchdown. I think that was his big coming out party game. But I think that would be a lot of fun to watch that on the track. The question I had for you, you mentioned him running on his home track. Obviously, I've never ran track before. I know you have in the past. Does it make a big difference when you're at home running?
Not many people were cheering for me when I ran at Hayward Field. So,
but is there a comfort level in terms of, do different tracks feel differently, or is it just you're just comfortable, you're at home, and the fans are cheering for you, so on and so forth?
I do think there is a difference. I think that I do think that guys and gals who compete at Hayward Field probably feel like this will be there's just a total level of comfort for them. But I also think that for most elite athletes, like Devon is definitely an elite athlete. If there's anyone who's going to beat him, that person will probably have laser focus as well, and so they probably wouldn't let kind of the kind of intricacies or eccentricities of a new track throw them off too much. Just like a different set of blocks or the procedure to get to the track, the warm-up track. I think people are pretty locked in, but I do think that Hayward Field seems to give the runners a better sense that they can kind of go above and beyond their season's best or whatnot.
All right.
Hey, I should actually add on the Devon Allen note. I didn't write about this, but the Prefontaine Classic was a couple weeks ago, and that's at Hayward Field. People probably know that's the biggest U.S. track meet of the whole summer. And we asked Aries Merritt, who is the world record holder in the high hurdles, and like what about Devon Allen? Like, what's he think about him? And he was saying that he's going to have two options probably for football or track for pros, but that he thinks that if he goes pro, he'll be an excellent pro, which I thought was pretty high praise. And take that with a grain of salt that Merritt and Devon Allen are pretty close. Like they're pretty good friends, acquaintances maybe, but they're pretty friendly with each other, and they're really complimentary of each other. But I don't necessarily think that Merritt would have said something that strong if he didn't believe it. So I was kind of interested by what he said. Merritt did run at the time, the second fastest high hurdles ever in NCAA history when he was in college at Tennessee, and then Devon Allen broke that. Right. So I think that's we've talked about it so many times, but like the track and football decision, what will he do? I still think it comes down to what happens at the trials and / Rio.
Right. So here's a question that I don't think we've really talked about. Has Devon Allen shown enough on the football field for you to think that like NFL's locked for him?
I don't think so. No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's just tough because there were just big moments in 2014 where you're like, oh man, this kid's going to be a stud. But he kind of had peaks and valley games. But then like you look at, never has he matched the production of say like a Braylon Addison who, barely caught on with an NFL team this year. I think he still has a lot more to prove on the football field than track. And I'm not saying that's he can't do it or it's not going to happen. I think I think everything kind of comes to a head this year, like you said, because if he has a really big track season, that's going to cut into his football year. And I think this is kind of his key football year if he's wanting to make an impression for his NFL future. But then again, if I'm a scout and I see that just his sure speed, I think that's going to open a couple doors for you regardless.
Yeah, that's kind of went back to my full out straight ahead speed thing that I was interested in. I'd be so curious what Allen could run in a 40. When he's been training for it, like the combine situation, just because I think that would be obviously intriguing for an NFL team. But outside of that, you're right. The production hasn't been this off the charts wow kind of level of production. So I still think he's got a better future in track, but you make a lot more money in football if you can stay in the game long enough. So we'll see. But I think he's set up pretty well either way. I think how good is that to be like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to chase NFL football. I think I'm going to go with my plan A instead. Not many people can say that.
Yeah, I chose to go a different route, but well, all right. Well, I think we've kind of covered all the topics that we were going to do for the day. As always, you can catch us on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Alger. He's at Andrew Greif. We would really, really, really appreciate it if you guys submitted some questions for us. That's an easy way for us to kind of get through some of these summer podcasts. Not that we have to get through them, but it helps smoothing up the process. We, some potential topics coming this way is the NBA draft is coming up here in a few weeks. Pac-12 media days are coming up here in, just about a month. So if you want to talk about just general Pac-12 stuff or basketball or more football, we will try to get Andrew Nemec on here one of these weeks for a better recruiting talk. But other than that, I think that's all I got for you, Andrew.
Let people forget that they are listening right now to a club hockey champion, Tyson Alger. I think we should let people know that you just won another championship in your league.
Well, when you start to do it every year, it just kind of loses its luster a bit. There's a little bit more pressure on you because it's like the Yankees. Either you win the championship or you win nothing. So, fortunately, we came out on top this year.
Did you score in the championship game?
I had the assist on the game winner.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of more of the person I am. I don't need the glory. I just need to just help you get there, Andrew.
Okay, last question. So is this one of those game winners that's like technically the game winner, but it's like the first goal in like a 14-0?
Okay, so we won.
Win, or is it a legit like game winner?
So we won 3-1. The third goal was an open netter, and so the second goal we scored was with 2 minutes left. So it put us up 2-1 with 2 minutes to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations once again.
Hey, well, I appreciate it, and I'm sure there's a lot of scouts listening to this, but I'm pretty content with my current job here. So.
Okay. Well, we hope that listeners are content with the job we're doing too, and hit us up on social media, email, whatever you want. We'll be here taking questions, and next week I think we should do another kind of themed episode. We'll see if we can dig out something.
Yeah, that sounds good. And until then, you can find all our stuff on OregonLive.com/ducks, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See you.